I am Lexi Burkhart, and I'm going to interview Zoe Elrick today. I'm going to talk to Zoe about landscapes of learning, her nature classes in the Galien Valley and Culture Program, and the ABC Garden in Michigan. To learn more about Zoe's work, see the links below. All right. So, from your childhood, what inspired you to be a landscape architect, an education designer, and a teacher?
Yeah, so I grew up in the 1980s in New York and Pennsylvania, and I cared for many things: people, nature, science, art, and more. And plus, I thought that education could be more beneficial to communities, people, and nature. And so during my high school days at home, I started to design many of my own school ideas. For instance, 20th century schooling tends to separate the subjects from each other. So, to the contrary, I wanted to combine the subjects together and to relate everything to nature. I wanted to solve, how can we improve schools? As in, how do we make education fun and practical and engaging with communities and nature? And yeah, I've just always enjoyed problem solving and creativity and education, innovation, curriculum design, history, science and art, nature and culture, and helping people and combining many of my interests together. And also, I'm a very visual spatial person. I'm a scientist and artist. And so today I brought with me many drawings and graphics and photos to share, so to help explain what I'm talking about. And scientists often use visual aids to explain what they're talking about. And science and art often overlap and help each other. And so thank you for sharing my visual aids.
Did you attend college? What did you study?
In the 1990s, for college, I attended the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. In college, I did not study education because college education usually separates subjects from each other. So instead, I studied landscape architecture because it ties many of my interests and subjects together: people, nature, science, art, and more. Like my college professor, Robert Riley, said, landscape architecture is the sustainable, enriching, harmonious fit between human systems and natural systems. Landscape architecture is both an art and science, analysis and intervention. End quote. So in this image here, you could see three of my plans from my very first landscape architecture class. Each of us students made designs for a shopping center, a college campus quad, and a botanical garden. So this was in the old days of hand drafting.
Landscape architecture is an uncommon profession. Um, can you tell me more about landscape architecture?
Yes. So, in the business world and design firms, landscape architects usually only design the landscapes, and landscape contractors are the ones that build the landscapes that landscape architects design. But there are also design build firms in which some landscape architects build the landscapes that they design too. So, landscape architecture is complex, and planting design is the distinguishing feature of landscape architecture. It's usually what people think of first. But just like opposable thumbs are the distinguishing feature of people, but I think people are more than just opposable thumbs. And likewise, landscape architecture is more than planting design. It's like after all, plants don't just float around the air, right? The plants are rooted in the ground. So landscape architecture is designing the whole landscape. So what is the landscape? To put it simply, land, water, hardscape, and plants. One, the shape and the slope of the land and topography of the ground. For instance, the hills, steep and gentle slopes, swales, flat areas, terraces, and more. Two, the water and drainage. For instance, ponds and rivers, the flow of rainwater across the land, rainwater drainage, rain gardens, and more. You don't want water to flow into buildings. And 3, the hardscape, including patios, plazas, paved paths, steps, fences, gates, benches, signs, lights, play structures, basketball courts, and more, and even where to place new buildings on the land. And last but not least, number 4, the softscape, which is the plants, trees, shrubs, and flowers. So in brief, the landscape architects design the land, the water, the hardscape, and the plants. Plus, landscape architects may include sustainability features and wildlife amenities in the design too. See here, so here's some very super simplified version of landscape architecture construction plans. And at least, every landscape architecture construction plan usually consists of these 4 things. You'll see the existing conditions and demolition plan. So landscape architects could help decide, what do we keep? What do we remove, or what do we save? Yeah, what do we remove? Maybe sometimes there are trees you do want to remove because maybe trees get old and they die over time. And then also we do the shape of the land. So for LA3, you could see we are changing the contour lines, like kind of the slope of the land. And you have to think about, well, where's the water going to go? So when you're only changing the land just a little bit, like in this example project, we're not really changing the water that much. So we don't have to add any drains or anything this time. But then you see the hardscape, right? You see, maybe we could put in a concrete walk and some steps and hand railings, and we'll put a nice bench there so you can sit down and look at the existing sculpture. And then, then there's usually a planting plan, where you put flowers and trees and shrubs if you want. So there's very super simplified plans of landscape architecture.
How is landscape architecture useful to society?
Yeah, I mean, at its best, landscape architecture does at least 4 things. 1, it helps people enjoy the outdoors. And 2, it helps even to improve people's health and economy. 3, it helps nature too. And 4, hopefully it helps nature and people get along with each other and even thrive together. Yeah, landscape architecture helps people enjoy the outdoors. For example, it designs paths for people, such as paved paths and nature trails. It designs beautiful scenery for people to see and walk through. It designs outdoor spaces for people to relax in, to play in, to learn in, to sit in, for picnics and more. Nature and the outdoors should be fun. 2, landscape architecture can help to improve people's health and economy. For instance, it designs healing gardens and farmers markets. It improves health, such as by planting trees to clean the air that people breathe and the water that people drink. Healthy people are better at working in the economy. Even America's first landscape architect, Frederick Law Olmsted, designed New York City's Central Park in the 1850s. Olmsted specifically advocated Central Park as an easily accessible place for city workers to visit, to escape from the city noise and filth and rush, to partake of the park's fresh air and beauty and serenity, to promote people's health and economy. Plus, Central Park adds real estate value to properties along Fifth Avenue. A healthy, beautiful landscape is more valuable than a bleak one. And 3, landscape architecture helps nature. For instance, it can add more native plants, which benefit native wildlife. It uses plants to help clean the air. It uses rain gardens to help clean the water. It applies various techniques to prevent excessive erosion caused by modern human development. And 4, landscape architecture helps people and nature get along with each other and even thrive together. The landscape can be designed to be purposed and used in ways that engages people to interact in ways that benefit both people and nature, such as community gardens and landscapes of learning about sustainability. Landscape architecture includes how people manage the land and nature, how people design, alter, and use the land and nature. So at its best, landscape architecture helps people to engage with nature in sustainable ways. According to ASLA, American Society of Landscape Architects, landscape architecture involves the planning, design, management, and nurturing of the built and natural environments. With their unique skill set, landscape architects work to improve human and environmental health in all communities. They plan and design parks, campuses, streetscapes, trails, plazas, residences, and other projects that strengthen communities. End quote.
So you just said sustainable, and your college professor said that landscape architects design sustainable landscapes. What does sustainable and unsustainable mean in landscape architecture?
Yeah, so sustainable means that something can continue indefinitely for hundreds of years or more. So sustainable means that people could live and businesses can run in ways that benefit both people and nature for hundreds of years and more. So 10 years ago, I was hearing a lot about sustainable technology, and I think sustainability is much more than only technology. 10 years ago, I made a list of 40 sustainability categories, including culture, education, ecology, economy, land use, technology, and more. And you could find the link to my 40 sustainability categories below. Meanwhile, are landscape architects sustainable? Do they sustain or even grow habitats and wildernesses? Yes, some landscape architects do grow many habitats and wilderness areas, including Pizzo and Associates, which I worked for 5 years in Michigan. And Pizzo restores and stewards prairies, wetlands, and woodlands. Otherwise, landscape architects do design of urban areas too. Usually, landscape architects do not stop the urban development of business areas, office sites, shopping centers, and residential areas. Preservationists might stop urban developments. Yet, if developers can't be stopped from developing, landscape architects work with developers to come up with a landscape design for the development that is as considerate to nature as possible. Some of my professional work was done in urban areas, in which case the land had already been developed for decades and was falling into urban decay. So yes, when I newly designed urban landscapes, I incorporated many natural features on the land with new buildings or renovated buildings. Also, lots of new urban and suburban development take place on old farmland, which usually means that people already cleared the nature there over 100 years ago. And again, usually when I designed the landscapes on old farmland, I incorporated many natural features. Meanwhile, sustainability and unsustainability are a scale, like from 1 to 10. A landscape design can be very unsustainable, or somewhat sustainable, or very sustainable. Landscape architecture includes the way that people design, alter, use, and manage the land and nature. So how sustainable landscape architecture is depends on how the land is designed, altered, used, and managed. For an example of an unsustainable design of a 2-acre schoolyard, like on a 1 on the sustainability scale, how about all the land is totally paved over with only asphalt or concrete, and the rainwater just flows across impermeable asphalt and directly into the stormwater drains, and there's nothing for kids to do on the land except to bounce balls against the pavement. There's no lawn, no trees, no tables and seats, etc. It's just all asphalt and empty and very hot on warm days. The parking area takes up only 1 acre, but the whole 2 acres are paved with asphalt. For an example of a somewhat sustainable design of a 2-acre schoolyard, like a 5 on the sustainability scale, how about there still be a 1-acre parking lot that's asphalt? Because most teachers need to drive to school. Many parents drive to school, and students are bused to school. I want very little of the world to be paved, but in this 2-acre schoolyard case, it makes sense that half of it is paved, unless you could get the teachers and students to school without motor vehicles. Like maybe they all live close enough to the school to walk to school. Anyway, in a sustainable schoolyard, if there is asphalt, maybe the asphalt is permeable, meaning that rainwater can percolate through the asphalt into the ground. Plus, there's a rain garden to the side of the parking lot to help to retain and cleanse the rainwater. On the 1 acre that is not a parking lot, perhaps there's a basketball court, a playground, 6 benches, 20 trees, and a ½ acre of lawn area, and maybe a little veggie garden too. So the rainwater, the trees, and the lawn help nature greatly more so than just asphalt. And the benches and veggie garden help people to spend more time outdoors. The play structure helps to give kids something more to do than just the bouncing balls. For an example of a very sustainable design of a 2-acre schoolyard, like an 8, 9, or 10 on the sustainability scale, how about there is still that 1 acre asphalt parking lot? On the 1 acre that is not parking lot, perhaps there's a playground, benches and picnic tables, 20 trees, native plants, a rain garden, a little veggie garden, and a landscape of learning, outdoor classrooms that help students learn about nature, how to take care of nature, and how to run a fair and sustainable economy more in harmony with nature. Maybe a basketball court and a lawn area fit within those 2 acres too, or if the school had more than 2 acres of land, they all can fit. Each property always has limited space, so in each case, you must choose what to have in the space. Can we fit only a playground, or only a basketball court, or both? Anyway, the most sustainable schoolyard designs have a landscape of learning for nature education and for a sustainable and fair economy education. Every type of economy heavily affects nature. A sustainable economy heavily affects nature in good ways. And schools and schoolyards should help kids to learn about the relationships between nature and economies. Our lives depend on this very type of education, eco-education of ecology and economy.
Zoe, what was one of your landscape architecture jobs early in your career? Did you design landscapes of learning?
Yes. So in the early 2000s, I worked for CBA Landscape Architects for 5 years in Boston, Massachusetts. And CBA is a landscape design firm. So we drew lots of landscape design plans, illustrative plans, and construction plans. And the landscape contractors would take our construction plans and build the landscapes that we designed. And I worked on a variety of projects. I did residential sites and urban streetscapes, library's children's garden, different campus areas, parks, playgrounds, schoolyards, and more. When I could, I integrated education and landscape design together to make landscapes of learning. I integrated academic lessons of language, history, science, and math into the landscape, for instance, at the John Elliott Schoolyard. My boss got the Elliott Schoolyard project for the firm, and it was her idea to incorporate Fibonacci into the schoolyard design. Fibonacci is an historic Italian mathematician, and the Elliott Schoolyard is in the historic Italian area of the North End of Boston. My boss gave me the design to do, and hence 20 years ago, I designed the schoolyard with many Fibonacci-related features. So Fibonacci lived 800 years ago in 1200 AD, and he helped to popularize the use of the numerals that we use today instead of Roman numerals. Plus, Fibonacci is most famous for his number series 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, etc. So adding the 2 consecutive numbers gives you the next consecutive number, as in 5 plus 8 equals 13, and 8 plus 13 equals 21, and so on. Meanwhile, I adore learning about local nature. Every place on Earth has fascinating nature, even in the northeastern United States. Boston, Massachusetts is along the Atlantic Ocean, and seashells wash up on the beach in and around Boston. Plus, I've always been tying nature, culture, and society together. It just so happens that some seashells have spirals that get bigger in proportion to the Fibonacci number series. Seashell animals are called mollusks. So the Fibonacci and mollusks are a heavy theme in the schoolyard design. I tied the Fibonacci and mollusk theme into lessons of language, history, science, and math throughout the playground. For instance, kids can read text on some panels of the play equipment, and the text explains some history, science, and math on Fibonacci and mollusks. And nature is throughout the playground as seen in graphics, plants, and local seashells. And I handpicked many seashells along the Massachusetts coast. Following, the seashells have been on display on the concrete wall of the Elliott Schoolyard's outdoor classroom sitting wall. Landscape designs can help students learn about local nature. I even designed an octopus fence between the play area and parking lot. An octopus is a mollusk too, although it doesn't have a shell. Other Boston schoolyards that I designed were much larger and definitely did have a lot of unpaved and green space. The Elliott Schoolyard is a teeny tiny schoolyard, like only a fifth of an acre. And my design does have a lot of asphalt, but at least it is permeable asphalt. Plus, there are 2 trees. And in hindsight, I think I should have proposed more green space, but it's such a tiny space. And before my schoolyard design was built, the whole schoolyard was only plain asphalt and empty. Most of it was used for parking. Basically, the students never had outdoor recess. And my design shrunk the previous tiny parking area in half to even be tinier, to the dismay of some teachers. But it's what the parents and school principal wanted even before they hired us to design the schoolyard. What is included and excluded in a landscape design is often a hard decision.
So, what have you done lately in your career to help children learn about nature?
Yes, so after the John Elliott Schoolyard and all that asphalt, I was wondering, what other activities can kids do in the schoolyard to learn about nature? So finally, in 2010, I discovered Tom Brown Jr.'s Tracker School of Nature Education and also Primitive Hunter-Gatherer Wilderness Survival. And so Tom Brown Jr., he learned his wilderness skills from his mentor, Stalking Wolf, an Apache Indian. So anyway, in 2010, I traveled to New Jersey and I took a couple of classes at the Tracker School there. And of course, and that's where I met you, Lexi, at the Tracker School. And also, and those classes at the Tracker School are really awesome. They're well worth it, very fun, very informative. And by 2010, I was living in Michigan. And so 10 years ago in 2011, I started the Galien Valley Nature and Culture Program, to teach nature classes and interdisciplinary classes to relate lots of subjects together and to relate them to nature. And plus, I wanted, as guiding kids to do really fun nature exploration activities so they can learn about nature and to learn about being sustainable. And several activities that we do at the Galien Valley Nature and Culture Program, I learned at the Tracker School.
What programs do you run at the Galien Valley Nature and Culture Program?
I've run exploration education, culture and nature classes, ecology and economy classes, and science and art classes. Plus, the classes include some primitive wilderness skills, so they are even history classes too. And that the wilderness skills is what primitive people did long ago, as well as recently. And my classes are interdisciplinary, and I intertwine many subjects. I teach people ages 6 and up. I teach kids and adults, and often together. I teach classes for families. Nature is huge, so there's always more to learn about nature. In my classes, many adults often say, I didn't know that, or I've never done these activities before. The classes that I've run include the Wilderness and Culture class, the Community and Landscape Eco Workshop, the Habitats and Wildlife class, and Nature and the Community Arts class. Also, starting last year, I've run online classes called Backyard Nature Zoom and Backyard Art Zoom. Most things they teach, even in the in person classes, can be done in parks and in people's backyards. For many years, I've been telling people, please try these nature class activities at home too. I teach my in person classes at various locations, sometimes at nature centers or schoolyards or churchyards or parks, and sometimes in people's backyards.
So, of what you have seen, what do children learn and gain from a nature based setting? And how are children directly impacted by their time in nature?
Yeah, I see that kids are more excited about life, more aware of the world, more courageous, more free, and more physically fit. So they're less like couch potatoes, less bored, less fearful, and less dwelling on profanity. For kids who already spend time outdoors, my classes encourage them to continue to be outdoors. The kids continue to learn new things about nature in my classes. For example, they enjoy learning more about native Michigan plants and native animals. Learning about wetlands and prairies is usually new to most people. Kids enjoy making nature crafts and nature journals. They enjoy playing nature games. Learning can be hands on, experiential, and fun. For kids who spend little time outdoors, my classes open new worlds to them. My classes have been in the woods, wetlands, prairies, and at the dunes of Lake Michigan. I've had a student who never walked barefoot on a sandy beach before, and some students who never walked up a big hill or dune before. The coast of Michigan has many sand dunes, some of which are 200 to 500 feet tall. Some kids live only 5 miles from Lake Michigan, yet they hardly ever see it. One day during class, when we walked out the woods between two dunes, out into the open beach in view of the vast Lake of Michigan, and the wind was blowing in our faces, a girl said, "Freedom." The experience of entering into a wide open beach and vast lake felt like entering into freedom to her. While learning in nature, kids are more excited about life, more aware of the world, more courageous, more free, more physically fit, less like a couch potato, less bored, less fearful, and less dwelling on profanity. For example, one spring day, I introduced the pussy willow with fuzzy buds to a class of mine of girls who were 13 to 10 years old, and I showed them twigs with fuzzy buds. I called it a pussy willow because that's what people have been calling it for hundreds of years or more. I didn't know much about plants until I was an adult. Today, I know hundreds of plants. As a child, I knew of perhaps only 20 plants, like many modern Americans. I knew about the rose, the maple tree, the tulip, the daffodil, and a few others, including the pussy willow. I learned about the pussy willow when I was 4 years old. Pussy willow twigs with fuzzy buds are commonly used in spring decorations in modern times. But these girls had never seen or heard of a pussy willow before. As soon as I said pussy willow to my class of girls, all the girls started giggling, gasping, smirking, showing shocked faces, and looking around at each other, like I said something vulgar and taboo. I immediately realized that they took the word pussy as a sexual innuendo. With a matter of fact attitude, I immediately explained, yes, pussy willow with fuzzy buds like a fuzzy cat. You know, a pussy is a cat. They quickly got the pussy cat concept and stopped giggling and smirking and went back to normal. I wasn't going to bring up the pussy willow again with them, but I accidentally did again the next week. As soon as the name pussy willow came out of my mouth, I was mentally kicking myself. But outwardly, I acted like everything was normal. And actually, I was pleasantly surprised. There was absolutely no giggling, no gasping, smirking, being shocked, and looking around at each other. Pussy was something more to them than only a sexual innuendo. That change for the better happened so fast, without any vigorous drilling with them for weeks. Nature rapidly improves our culture and makes life less vulgar. Kids are eager to have a more precious life, full of awness, cuteness, delight, and awesomeness, and a life less vulgar.
While the Galien Valley Nature and Culture Program keeps running, What current project are you pursuing to encourage landscapes of learning? Tell me about the ABC garden.
Yes, so lately with my own landscape architecture firm, Z Design, I've been designing ABC gardens, which integrate general education, nature education, and landscape architecture to integrate them together to create landscapes of learning. Everything is connected. So the ABC garden links together nature and the school and economy, even including farmers markets. So 10 years ago, Lexi, you on your YouTube channel, you posted some videos that you made on farmers markets and the spirit of community. And now with me, this video, it also touches on farmers markets and the spirit of community, because everything is connected. Going back to my childhood desire to unite subjects and make education fun and practical and engaging in the community and nature, the ABC Garden fulfills that. The ABC Garden is a venue for exploration education to explore science, art, ecology, economy, nature, community, and more. Plus, the ABC Garden uses my skills as a landscape architect to design landscapes of learning. The ABC Garden joins my landscape architecture profession with my teaching profession. The ABC Garden consists of outdoor classrooms for many nature activities that I teach in the Galien Valley Nature and Cultural Program. I can somewhat teach the activities in a variety of places, but an ABC Garden would be an even better place for them. Plus, I can teach more things too. Furthermore, the ABC Garden helps the activities be more accessible to schools. As the best of landscape architecture does, the ABC Garden helps people to enjoy nature. It boosts people's health and economy. It helps nature, and it helps people and nature to harmonize and synergize with each other. Going back to the earlier mentioned explanation of the sustainability scale, the ABC Garden is a 10. An ABC Garden is not necessarily appropriate and sustainable for a wilderness preserve, but an ABC Garden would be very sustainable and appropriate at most schoolyards. The ABC Garden is very sustainable in that it helps people to learn about sustainable relationships between nature and the economy and community government. Our lives depend on this very type of education, eco-education of ecology and economy, and the science and art of community and gardens and farmers markets, as well as housing, water, sanitation, habitat stewardship, reducing poverty and racism, and promoting peace and more. Everything is connected. Therefore, as soon as students learn how to steward both the economy and nature so that both people and nature do well, this simultaneously diminishes many problems together, from poverty to racism to war to environmental issues to health issues and more. Kids can greatly help both nature and the economy. The ABC Garden program can immediately start as after-school programs, weekend programs, and summer camps, as well as much as schools want to use the ABC Garden during regular school hours. The ABC Garden is a landscape architecture design of not only the landscape itself, but also of what people do on the schoolyard. For example, in any kind of project, after a path is built, people tend to walk along the path. Also, in any project, after a tennis court is built, people tend to play tennis there. So therefore, after an attractive outdoor classroom is built, people will be attracted to teach more lessons outdoors there at the outdoor classroom and teach less often indoors. Ideally, landscape architecture is designed in a way that helps people to connect with nature, learn about sustainability, and carry out sustainable actions. The ABC Garden does that. The ABC Garden entails the construction of a landscape design of a specific outdoor classroom infrastructure. Once built, the ABC Garden outdoor classrooms are set for classes to use them with corresponding curricula and lessons. The ABC Garden supports exploration education. a fun and informative education of the ABCs of exploring the outdoors, nature, the local community, science, art, sustainable solutions, and more. It covers the ABCs, the basic simple start of learning about nature, community, science, art, and as well as more complex steps. Students learn a lot of science, including to learn about plants, and then apply that science to make art. The ABC Garden is an infrastructure of outdoor classrooms at which to learn about the ABCs of nature and the local community. It gets education more outside and into the community and less isolated indoors. The ABC Garden is not only a veggie garden, but also a garden of human needs and vital community tasks, including housing, water, fuel, food, waste management, and more. ABC Garden supports handy education, which is help all neighbors do well yard, with the ABCs of human needs and a fair economy to help to end poverty. At the ABC Garden, students learn the ABCs, the very simple basic elements of nature, the local community, economy, and human needs in their primitive forms, as well as more complex forms. The ABC Garden helps students participate in community cooperation through hands-on vital community tasks, instead of only through sports and clubs and electronics. The ABC Garden is a land design innovation, social innovation, civic innovation, education innovation, economic innovation, and sustainability innovation. ABC Garden provides a visual spatial tool for teaching about the basic tasks of a community and solving community problems to help solve global problems. ABC Garden is not only a visual spatial design to exhibit important community tasks, but also it is a functional structure that students use to actively run a small example community, as well as to outreach into the existing community. The ABC Garden is for the active use, as well as to provide a space to exhibit the essential community tasks that no person can live without. The ABC Garden provides spaces to do a variety of vital community tasks, as well as activities related to many of the 40 sustainability categories. The ABC Garden is needed because most schools have spaces for only academics, technology, and sports, and no spaces for community tasks. If some schools are already doing some community tasks, the ABC Garden can help those schools to enhance their community task efforts. Other schools that are not yet doing community tasks can benefit from the ABC Garden, helping those schools to get started on and to improve on doing community tasks. An ABC Garden can be built elsewhere in addition to schools, such as at nature centers, community centers, science and art centers, shopping centers, and more. Most importantly, every school should have an ABC Garden of some sort. Schools of the 21st century have ABC Gardens. And below, there are various links to landscape architecture, nature classes, the ABC Garden, and related web pages.
So thank you so much for doing this second interview today. It's been so much fun. You're such an interesting, smart person, and I just learned so much from you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And you have many good qualities too. You're thoughtful and friendly and fun and more. And also, and thank you again for doing 2 interviews with me. It was so fun to do the first interview last week. It was just more of an impromptu conversation style interview. And this one this week was very heavily planned. So it's kind of fun to experiment and try those different forms. And also, and thank you again for interviewing me and other nature education teachers.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.